All right, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Anna Sabramowitz here, your interactive storytelling coach. How are you? Today, we're getting more deeply into storytelling, of course, interactive storytelling to be exact. And as I promised, what I would do is go through the different mechanics that you would overlay over a story, over your interactive story framework to make it more contextual, more meaningful, more compelling, and more engaging. All right, so are you guys ready? Today we're going to talk about the fail and how people fail at the fail. How I used to fail at the fail, now I don't fail at the fail anymore. It is awesome, all right? And we're gonna talk about the wonderful failure. What is that? Okay, and of course, I'm gonna give you an example that you should go check out to see this in action, because that's the best way to learn, is to see what works out there, model it, and then see how it works for you, apply it in your context. That's what I believe. All right, so without further ado, let me just bring up the chat here so I can see the awesomeness that has joined me. And you know, if you guys are just stopping by, you better say hello. It makes my day. And I always read your comments, even if it's afterwards. So if you have any questions, anything that comes up during this, please post it. Make sure you let me know, all right? Hey, we've got Christina here, and we've got Joan. Hello, hello. So wonderful to have you here. Thanks for saying hello. I really appreciate that. Okay, so first off, let's just quickly, in case this is your very first time here, let me just give you a little bit of context, okay? And one of the cool things that's kind of neat, I learned a while back, because one of the people that has deeply influenced my work is my partner Ryan, and Ryan is a huge comic book fan. And of course, he introduced me to one of then my favorite instructional designers, Stan Lee. Did you guys know that Stan Lee, yes, the guy behind all those Spider-Man comics and all that stuff, he was an instructional designer. I'd say that's pretty awesome, right? So Stan Lee had this thing where every single comic, if you pick it up, he knew that what would happen is he wouldn't assume that everybody would know that the story, that anybody would know the backstory of that specific character. So if you pick up a comic book that's in a series, let's say there's 21, what he would do is he would give you a little bit of an overview and context about where this character was at, where they came from, so that when you got into the story, you would understand why it's important, and it wouldn't feel kind of loose, right? Which was really cool. And it's kind of neat how you think about all these instructional strategies and then how he brought them to the comic book world, and he probably borrowed a bunch and brought them back into the instructional world. In fact, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. All right. So, hey, and Ellen is here, and she says, I love the making failure sexy idea, and hello to you too, my dear. All right. So let's talk about this. Okay. So first off, right, interactive story. Guys, let me know if you guys can see this. Hopefully that's working. Sweet. Okay, so we're talking about interactive stories. Nothing else that's being talked about here is different than this. Really, we're trying to get this. I don't want to make you, I don't want to overwhelm you with anything. I'm trying to release a little bit at a time, and I'm going to give you examples where you can go and check this out, because we always talk about this in our world, how, our stakeholders can't imagine what's possible. But then again, it's hard for us to imagine what's possible if we haven't seen those examples. And that's why I say, if you want to be a really good interactive storyteller, you can't just conceptually understand this stuff. You have to go experience great interactive stories. And I share those all the time in my Facebook group, Engaging eLearning, so check it out. And then the other thing is the inevitable, right? You want to get good at interactive storytelling, you got to start building stuff, right? That's how you do it. All right, so interactive stories. So, and I actually have gone into this model as well. So you guys better, if you're kind of confused right now, make sure you come back to that model. Oh, and we've got Tyler here, we've got Corey, we've got Apurva, and we've got Christina. And I'll answer some of those questions a little later, you guys. Okay, so remember, interactive story. A character that wants something, vision someplace, right? They want to win the trophy, win the girl, take their mom to the place where the ancestors were, where they got. I know this is a good one. I just thought of this. maybe this guy's a salesperson, and what he wants to do is his mom has always dreamed of going back to where her and her husband first met, and it was like in some little nook and cranny in England, some pub, and he wants to pay for an all-exclusive trip so she can go there and reminisce. Maybe it's for both his parents. Who knows, right? Kind of fun, right? I love coming up with this stuff. Anyways, let's talk about the wonderful failure. So in your interactive story, what happens is you have a whole bunch of decisions in the middle, very contextual decisions to your audience. And these decisions, even though this is a linear story, you can manipulate this in the middle so that based on those decisions, and we talk about the mechanic in the future videos. But what happens is, if I make 3 really terrible decisions, I really shouldn't get to stick around and see this amazing end, right? That's really not how this works, right? The idea is for me to, if I'm not doing so good, to actually see not only the consequences of my poor decisions, but if it makes sense for my target audience, I probably don't want them to get to the end and see the successful ending. I probably want to send them to a failure. Now, there's very strategic ways to do that, but this is where we drop the ball. We make this all sexy. It's like, yeah, you win. Yes, grandma got to travel, and you took your kids to Disney World, and everybody in the neighborhood is jealous of your new Tesla. Yeah. But the failure has to be just as sexy, and there's a reason for this. One, and this happens in games. I don't know how many guys and gals have played games. Like I've played personally those awful games like Halo and stuff like that, right? They're awful because when you die, you don't just die. There's moments where like you're laying there, it's probably not Halo, but you're laying there, you got shot, you're laying there and the screen's turning like red, right? Because you're dying, and also you keep getting shot, and maybe the guy who just shot you is coming up and kicking you, and you're like, I'm dead, I can't do anything, right? It's horrible. But the thing is I earned that. Like I earned that ending. And when I say I earned that, it wasn't like you're trying to punish me in a way. It's not about punishment, but it's my ending to experience, right? And so if you're crafting an interactive story, the failure, which is also very contextual, has to be meaningful. You want to get it over the top, and that's why we call it something called a wonderful failure, all right? I want to feel like if I really mess up, there's a consequence there, even on top of these actions, and that's super important. So, and not every interactive story is going to have this, but I feel like if they don't, they're really missing out on really driving the lesson home, because you should if you can, right? You only got them for, realistically, let's talk about this. Realistically, how long do you have people's attention for? Maybe 5 to 7 minutes, right? Your interactive story, a good interactive story usually runs for that long. If it's longer, it has to be super, there's a reason. It's contextual, targeted at an audience. You're a master storyteller. The decisions are super contextual. There's lots of other mechanics that keep you going so you can stay engaged, right? Awesome. So, I've got Satacha here. Hi. So, let me talk to you about the wonderful failure. So, the path to failure, right? There's several ways that you can actually drive somebody to failure in the interactive story. So, either you can have a scenario where a certain decision actually branches off and takes you on that path. There are several really great examples of this, and I'll share that when we get into like branching and when to use it, right? But so you can have a branch that takes somebody off, like a decision is critical, and there are certain situations where in your context, if you make a decision regardless of your intent or regardless of what you do after that, let's say success is not going to happen. And a perfect example of this is, let's say you work at a call center and somebody calls in and you don't verify that they're the card holder. Let's say you work for a financial institution. Now, if I don't verify that person, regardless of how awesome the decisions are afterwards, I've basically failed that interaction, because I might be giving information to somebody who's fishing for info, who's not even a part of that account, right? So at that point, that decision, that poor choice leads me to that failure, right? and maybe an opportunity to, maybe correct my mistake, but that's a decision I need to make as the designer and as the person who's observed the context, saying, can this person recover from this poor decision, right? And that's also another mechanic. So they make a poor choice, we can send them to the bad ending. Maybe you don't want to do the branching. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe what you want to do is have basically a score, keep score at each decision. And if each decision, which already leads to a consequence, if those decisions accumulate a certain kind of score, that's basically the kick-out score, which we call the karma meter. If that accumulates enough, you just send them directly to that bad ending. So that's another way to do it without actually using branching. And then, or this is cool too, in some cases and in some contexts, and we'll talk about this as well, decisions, you can't sit on them, right? Like, when you look at some, and this really depends on the context as well of what you're doing, but sometimes to add a bit of drama and add a bit of context to some of the decisions that you have in an interactive story, you might add a timer. So if you're doing prime example of this is, let's say you're doing an interactive story about saving somebody's life. And the decisions are about, you taking quick actions to deliver first aid. I'm not going to let you sit there and think about what you're going to do next, right? Because real life demands that you make decisions quickly. And in those situations, especially life and death ones, if I run out of time, that might be death. That might be, somebody's hand getting severed. You're not taking action too quickly. You're not pulling the button. You're not pushing the fire button quickly, or the emergency button, right? So running out of time might actually lead somebody to a wonderful failure, saying you didn't act fast enough and people died, or you didn't act fast enough and the whole place burned down, whatever it was, right? So there's several paths to this failure. And then when you get here, you better drama it up. And I'm not saying, it's kind of funny because people, sometimes when you work with stakeholders, they'll be like, oh, we can't show them that. Then they'll think that this is what happens. And I'm like, yeah, this is the worst case scenario. It's actually totally cool to show them the worst case scenario. There are contexts where you would not show the worst case scenario, of course. If we're talking about, it depends on the context, again, of what you're doing. So here's one example for you. An amazing interactive story called Decisions That Matter, right? In Decisions That Matter, no, it's called Real Talk About Suicide, sorry. It still has Decisions That Matter. But what happens is the goal there is to get people to engage in conversations with somebody who's considering suicide. And the entire goal of that interactive story is to get you to learn two things: to listen, ask questions, and listen, and try and understand that person's perspective by listening. That's all we're trying to reinforce. Now, guess what? I am not going to show those people a wonderful failure. It would be like the worst thing, right? It doesn't apply to all things. I don't want to show them the wonderful failure there. I want to bring them back and say, no, that's not going to help this person try again. No, let's do this differently. Let's approach it differently. Let's revisit, let's reflect, let's rethink. I'm not going to show them this because this will just freak them out, and they're going to say, see, I can't even do this because this is going to be a terrible deterrent. However, there are places where this actually really works, when the stakes aren't so high, right? Where they're not so high, but they're pretty high. So one example that I suggest you check out is Broken Coworker. So in Broken Coworker, which is the module is meant to, yes, it introduces you to the world of bullying. And what it does is it's a linear story. There's no branching in it. It feels like there is. I'm giving it away. There's no branching in it. But what happens is we used karma score based on your answers to kick you out of the story early if you really didn't get the fact that your decisions contributed to your terrible situation, Sam's terrible situation. And that what we do is we show you what that culminates in. And it's horrible. It's kind of sad, kind of funny, kind of terrible. And it's funny because a lot of times what happens is people experience this, and at first it's might be a little funny because it's a little over the top. But you know what it also does? For some people, it really like lives in there, and they think about it and they relive it a little over and over, and they start thinking about the consequences for themselves. So at first, and you know why people laugh sometimes, right? Because what they thought would be reality is different. And that's why that's it, and it's a bit of a uncomfortable thing. So sometimes that, even though it's over the top and it makes somebody laugh a little, it's actually a good thing, because it means you surprise them. And that is emotionally, that is also a very good thing. You want that, right? So if you get a reaction, like how many times have you checked out an e-learning module or any kind of experience online where you're like, oh my God, that is a reaction. I want that. I want them to be shocked by that end. I want them to be like, what? Wow. Oh my gosh. This is important. You're trying to break people out of their apathy, right? And so what happens is, a lot of us, when we do these stories, whatever, the end will be like, no, that didn't work out, try again. Lame. you gotta build up that failure so that they feel like they've earned it, and they're like, yeah, I did that. This is a culmination from my decisions. I wonder if I can, and then hopefully what it does is, if you made this, like I said, sexy enough, this failure, they'll want to go back and check out what the success looks like, because it'll also be sexy and it'll also be something that they earned. We want that. It's awesome, right? It feels good, because then you're like, oh, I know what the opposite is like. It's here. I wonder if I can do something else that it results in something better, right? So I want you to think about that. Context is everything, of course, as I told you, right? But when you can use it well, this is awesome. This is a lesson. Don't rob them of this lesson as well. So yes, everybody in your interactive story gets a lesson from each decision, because there's that consequence that happens. But this is the next thing. This could even be, in some cases, and it doesn't even have to be immediate. Your wonderful failure could be like 6 months later, what happens. A wonderful failure could be like, let's say you're doing something about health. I could be like, smoking every day and drinking a bottle of wine and having junk food, making poor decisions. And then 6 months later, you could show me on like, unable to, my dog runs away from me and I'm unable to catch him, and he gets caught under a car because I can't catch my dog because I'm so out of shape and so out of breath. It's pretty bad, eh? I come up with these drama things all the time. Of course, you got to go over the top, and then your stakeholders are like, okay, let's bring that down a little bit. And you're like, okay, I can negotiate from there, right? So go over the top. It actually helps. All right. So like I said, consider this. Your interactive story, beginning, middle, end. The middle is where all the drama and decisions happen. This is where you can incorporate the timer. This, the time sequence, this is where you can incorporate the scoring for each question. This is also where you can incorporate a branch that leads them out to the wonderful failure. So, like I said, everything you need to, in order to become a good interactive storyteller, one, you need to start practicing this. You need to go see good interactive stories, experience them several times so that you can start seeing the mechanics, because first time, a good interactive story is like a good movie. You will not see the mechanics. You will not see the hero's journey. None of those things. You will not see film cuts. You will not see transitions. What you will see is just lose yourself in that experience, which is amazing and awesome. But the second time, the third time, you can start seeing the mechanics behind things, and then you can begin to model them and apply them to your own work. And that's what people are doing. That's what we're doing in our community. So experience those things, look at them, see how you can apply them in context, see what works, model that. And of course, the next thing is apply it and build, and then iterate. Nothing, your first try might not be awesome. That's okay. This is really what we're doing, is the scientific method here, right? We're iterating and we're testing things. We're not coming up with things from scratch. I'm not, inventing this stuff. This has been around thousands and thousands of years. Cavemen walking around having, chalk drawings. Amazing, right? But now we're borrowing back from like the film industry, the entertainment industry, the gaming industry. They have a ton of data on what works, a ton of models that are awesome, and we're just borrowing that back and augmenting what we already do in instructional design and crafting experiences that move people emotionally into a state where they're ready to learn more, which is important, because a lot of us are, we incorporate stories and we think, oh, if we just use a story and a character, it's going to make it memorable. Maybe, but first you got to get somebody mentally prepared to jump into that. And if they're not ready to jump into that, it's not going to work because they're not even going to open what you have to show them, right? So can you get them excited, pique their curiosity, emotionally connect with them, and show them the possibilities, right? This could be yours, but then if you don't take the right actions, this is what could happen. And it's not them, it's the character, right? Remember that. We're always stepping back and saying, it's not you. Well, this is for you to reflect on. But this character, look, the decisions you helped them make brought them to this reality. Wow. I wonder if there's a better way. I wonder if there's training that could help you be a better person, be the person who sells better, be the person who makes better decisions in their diet, a doctor who is better able to persuade people to move to action and actually invest in themselves as far as exercise and diet, whatever, right? Whatever your target audience is, that's what you're trying to do. Move them from that one state to another state. Because as I'm always going to tell you, people come into our training with beliefs about how the world works, beliefs about who they are as a person. A lot of people have limiting beliefs that hold them back from taking action because they've created a universe around them that confirms their bias, right? We all do this. But if you walk into each of these situations knowing that that's what you're battling, then you have to get more strategic with how you're approaching getting this learning in front of people and getting them engaged in that process. Because otherwise you're crafting amazing pieces. They're sitting in some LMS somewhere and nobody's looking at them because they haven't sold themselves on that value yet. And you telling them what the value is not enough. They have to come up with those aha moments themselves. And that's where an interactive story fits in. It's that catalyst to get them there, right? And it's an augmentation of what you're already doing right. So a lot of people talk to me and they're like, oh, instructional design, I'm already, we don't talk about emotion or, behavior change in this way. We really are, focused on performance, key indicators, all this stuff, right? And I was like, that's cool. But what you have to consider is that people don't wake up wanting to learn. People wake up wanting to have a good day. And people aren't born learners. People become learners as a result of the things that drive them. And so one of the things we have to do is figure out what drives them as a human, as a person, because they don't come to work, they come to work to do all the things that they love. So if you can connect those two things for people and make it less about performance and make it more about living a better life for them, you win. They win and you win, because then you can connect to the things that you're training to them living a better life, and they're doing that on their own. And then they're coming in, seeing its value. And that's huge. That's such a big mind shift. And that's something that I had to think about I had to realize for a long time, because for me it was all performance. But then I thought, people are humans, right? Our learners are humans. How can we connect it to the bigger picture for them? And once somebody does that, they will find the training you offer. They will dig through it. They will look at stuff that's, 10 years old, doesn't look sexy. But if they know the purpose, it fills their purpose in life, they will look at it. Just like you'll look at crappy YouTube videos, poorly edited, sounds not good. But if it's solving your problem that's burning in the kitchen, you're going to look at it because it's meaningful to you, right? It solves that problem. So that's why my focus is not necessarily that we have to make the training more sexy. There's definitely room for improvement, but what's that thing that moves them forward to actually get them excited about that training? That's one of the things that interactive storytelling does, is it gets them to think about, lets the guard down enough, the ego down enough, the beliefs down enough to have them consider another perspective. And that's where that little tweak can sometimes happen, gives them that aha. So I hope that was valuable and you found it a little bit of maybe provocative, helpful. Nobody thinks about failure being sexy, but now I'm like, let's amp it up. Let's make it sexy because people want to earn it. Even though we don't think they want to, they do. They want to see what that fail looks like. And Sorry, it was just, I seriously love talking about this stuff, and I'm gonna have more examples for you. I'll put the link underneath the video. Now, the other thing is, we're running an interactive storytelling coaching program where if you wanna dig into this and actually just, not talk about it theoretically, but actually apply and launch your own piece, whether that is for, launching it in an organization with the support of people who are actually have done this for over a decade, to maybe just really augmenting your existing skill set and saying, yeah, I want to add this. This is making sense. I want to add this, but in a structured way with somebody there to basically support you, hold your hand, be your accountability buddy. If that sounds awesome, I'd love to talk to you, because then you're my kind of people. All right, so I'll put the link underneath the video also to book a call with me. We'll talk about where you want to go. We'll talk about if I can help you get there, and we'll go from there. So if you found this useful, you better share, and any comments you have, put them underneath the video. Like I said, I look at all of them and I get notifications, so let me know if there's anything that came up for you where you have some questions about the context you're applying this in. And tune in again tomorrow for another awesome interactive storytelling mechanic. Take care, friends. Bye. Thanks for being here.